the Medical School HQ podcast, session number 34. Hello, and welcome back to another session here at the Medical School Headquarters podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Gray. We are the podcast about medical school, taking you through the pre-med process, medical school, and even through residency. We're here to take your knowledge of becoming a physician to the next level. And today I take it to the next level with a very popular social media pre-med person. And I say person because when I initially reached out to this social media account, I didn't really know who was behind it. I didn't know if it was a real person. I didn't know if it was an actual pre-med student. It could have been some 60-year-old Billy Bob from the middle of nowhere just having fun with pre-med people. The account that I'm talking about is Pre-Med Princess on Twitter. She has 9,000 plus followers as of this recording, and she basically spreads the pre-med gospel on Twitter. And she's doing some other stuff as well now, sharing her experiences going through the pre-med process, helping other pre-med students out there, and giving a lot of encouragement and motivation to the other pre-med students. So I initially reached out to her and found out that, yes, it is actually a real pre-med person, and her name is Martini. And I let her tell her story. And one of the biggest things that I found from talking to her is that she's very similar to myself. The initial falling in love with anatomy, the kind of slap in the face that was the Mcat. As you hear her story, you'll hear how she was a great student. She was an athlete in college, a full ride to college for her athletic ability. And the Mcat snuck up on her, and she didn't respect the Mcat, as we've come to now say. And that was the biggest thing that I wanted her to share with everybody, and to realize that even if you are an excellent test taker, even if you have great grades, even if you ace the SAT, the ACT, the Mcat is going to be a total different beast, and you have to prepare for it totally differently. So to get started with Martini, we talk about when she initially knew she wanted to be a doctor.
I actually never even imagined being anything other than dealing with science. I thought about being a vet at one time and a marine biologist. I've always been interested in oceans and obviously the animals dwelling within the oceans. And I've always loved animals as well. But I think I realized I loved people more than animals in high school. Every doctor visit, it just intrigued me, everything that they were doing. And then it kind of ties into what happened with my sister whenever she was little. I've used that for my motivation and inspiration. But I took anatomy in high school, and that kind of just solidified everything. I'd never loved a subject even more. I honestly didn't really like studying until I took that class, and everything seemed to fall in place. I would willingly study for hours each night, and I never really did that before, and something clicked, and I was like, you know what, this is exactly what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I've kind of solidified that over the years, volunteering and shadowing, obviously, and continuing my study throughout undergrad.
That's funny because that's almost the exact same story that I had.
Really?
Anatomy was my go-to. I was the anatomy guy. I've told the story how it was anatomy class in high school. I dissected a cat, and I knew then that I was going to be a surgeon. And
right,
I was bringing in power tools from home, and everybody was looking at me funny. And so it's funny. And even through medical school,
I carried my own dissection kit in my purse.
Yeah, it's a little crazy.
Yeah.
Chunks of flesh falling off in your purse, pulling out your credit card.
We love it, don't we?
Okay.
Everyone else would be grossed out and think it's weird, but...
So, I want to take a step back and try to figure out for you and then for others listening, how did you go from knowing that, okay, maybe being a doctor is what you want to do because you loved anatomy and you knew all that. Where did you find out that you had to do the shadowing or should do shadowing and do the volunteering?
My uncle actually invited me to come to the office. I was telling him, my desire to pursue medicine. And I think it was my freshman year in college, I decided to be a biology major. And obviously then I was considered pre-med. And he's a pediatrician. And I just started going with him to his clinic as well as rounds at the hospital. And I just fell in love. Most people are scared of hospitals, and I just feel completely at home. Like, I don't want to be anywhere else besides the hospital. So that's when I started, like I said, my freshman year in college.
Okay, so you had a family member who was a physician.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Any other physicians in the family?
Yes, my cousin, he is he's a chief neurosurgeon at it's some army hospital, I forget. But I don't I talked to him not as much as obviously I talked to my uncle, who's just a pediatrician.
Okay.
So
how long ago did your uncle go through the process? Roughly.
I want to say 15 years ago. He's 40. He set out a year
He's
too.
old. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have kind of a built-in resource.
Right.
Okay.
Definitely a lot of references for shadowing, which has helped me out tremendously.
Yeah. That is definitely key.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so let's talk about the college years. What you said you majored in biology.
Right.
And just some people listening might be a little confused. So we're talking past tense here because you've already graduated college, correct?
Right. Okay. I graduated in May this year.
Oh, congrats.
Thank you.
So starting off your pre-med path in college as a biology major, how did you find the pre-med world? Were you overwhelmed? Were classes easy?
They were, a lot of people, I don't want to say a lot, but a few people struggle with their freshman year, and I think it's adapting to everything. I had good study habits in high school, and I just, made them even better in college, and it was easy for me in the beginning, like my freshman year, but my sophomore year when I was taking physics, and then my junior year when I took organic chemistry, then I started to struggle. I never struggled with a class until organic chemistry too. But, yeah.
Okay. When you say you had good study habits in high school and you strengthened them in college, now you were an athlete, correct?
Right. I played 3 sports in high school.
Okay, so that kind of forced you to be a good student.
Yep.
Okay.
It definitely did. It kept me on a schedule. I would be in school all day and then obviously practice 2 or 3 hours, then come home and study. And I just did the same thing in college. It's like second nature. It's like built into me. That's what I need to do.
Okay.
Doing it over so many years.
And were you participating in sports in college as well?
Yes, I was on a full ride for track. So I definitely had to take that serious.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
And where did you go to undergrad?
I went to Glenville State College. It's a small Division II school in West Virginia.
Okay.
I had a couple D1 offers, but obviously you can't pass down a full ride. And I knew med school would obviously be an arm and a leg. So I wanted to be debt-free coming out of undergrad.
Yeah. And I think that is very fiscally responsible. So I congratulate you for that.
I think so too now.
Yeah. Good. All right. So let's talk about, you said classes were kind of easy. What was your GPA?
It was close. I can't remember exactly. It was close to a 4.0 my freshman year. Sophomore year was about a 3.8, and then I consistently kept about 3.76 or above, ending out, and then I finished with like a 3.75.
which is pretty good.
Yeah.
So 375, a full-time athlete, pre-med. I'm assuming
Right.
you were doing the normal volunteering, shadowing, all the other kind of
The
stuff
works.
that you had to do.
Right. All that fluffy.
Okay.
Yes.
So from the picture I'm getting, you'd be at this point a shoo-in kind of for med school. You're the perfect applicant.
Right.
You're well-rounded because you have that athletic side, that experience of being away from books that a lot of admissions committees like.
Right. Well, one would think.
One would think. Okay, so let's talk about, and one of the biggest reasons I wanted to have you on is to share your experience with the MCAT. Talk about when you, I don't want to say first found out about the MCAT, but when you started kind of dipping your toe in the MCAT world, and we'll go from there.
I mean, it basically was finding out. I didn't realize until my junior year. I think the spring of my junior year, when you should have already been preparing your sophomore year, I knew which classes I needed for medical school, but I didn't really know anything about the MCAT. I didn't know what subjects were tested. But my teacher was like, hey, you're a junior. You're going to be applying. Have you taken your MCAT yet? And I was like, MCAT, what's that?
What is that?
I'd never even heard of that before. And I didn't even know about it. I did not know anything about it in high school. I just thought you went to college, you had good grades, you could apply to medical school and get in. I just thought it was easy as pie. And I was completely and totally wrong.
So let me stop you there. How did you not know about the MCAT?
They never really talked about it in high school. It was never even brought up, I don't think.
Okay, but were you involved in any kind of pre-med committees or clubs in undergrad?
See, that's the problem with being Division II. We didn't have any pre-med club. There was no pre-med program in my undergrad. And I think we had one. She was just considered a pre-med advisor, just one professor. And that's about it. It wasn't huge at our school. I went to a liberal arts college, and that's why I picked biology. Obviously, I love science, or else I would have majored in micro or something other than that. But like I said, pre-med wasn't huge in my undergrad, and I had never even heard of the MCAT before.
Okay. So that would explain it. And you weren't browsing around like Student Doctor Network and searching for all the information you could, because you were busy as a full-time athlete and studying for all your courses. I
never even considered. Okay. I didn't even know what Student Doctor Network was either till my senior year.
Okay. All right. So it was junior year, you find out this test called the MCAT. You're like, oh, I'm a good student. I have great grades. It's just another test like the SAT, the ACT, whatever.
Right.
I'll just go and take it. Did you take any kind of prep course? Did you know about prep courses?
I didn't. I had no idea about prep courses. I just went to Barnes & Noble, my local bookstore, and went to the test prep section, found the first MCAT book that looked pretty good. It was like the thickest one. So I thought, oh, well, that should work. And I grabbed it, and I literally probably studied a couple days before, just like reading through just simple things. And I was like, I don't know why I bought this. I don't even need it. And I took that test and completely wrong.
Okay. So we won't talk about the result yet, but you didn't.
I'd rather not.
That's fine. You didn't.
No, it's okay.
You didn't take any practice tests?
Not at all. Not the first time now.
Okay. So you went in blind.
I did.
Very blind.
I went in thinking, obviously I've made good grades. I thought I was intelligent enough. I thought I would be fine. I didn't study for the ACT, and I did pretty well. It got me out of some college courses that I didn't need to take, and I just thought it would be, I only need a 24 for these two medical schools in state. That's the only place I want to go, either or. And, couple points shy.
Yeah. So So take me through your mindset of sitting in that test and actually taking it. Were you confident taking it?
At first, yes, I went in very confident, thinking I would do well. And once I saw that first passage, all of my confidence went down the drain.
Okay.
So, yeah, it was not.
And for early pre-medders out there that are listening, it might might not understand the importance that we're trying to get across here of how the MCAT isn't like anything else that you've ever seen before. And
nothing, right.
It's not a test that says 2 + 2 = A, B, C, D, pick one. It is very much a test that challenges your thinking ability. And you go, well, okay, I'm smart, I can think, but it's very strange. It's different than thinking normally. It's thinking for the MCAT.
Right.
Would you agree with that?
Completely. It's nothing like, I don't think, I personally have never experienced anything, not even the ACT or the SAT was even similar to that. I think the MCAT is a marathon. It's, roughly 4 to 5 hours. You have to really be prepared. And most of us, sit in class for an hour or so. In college, even in high school, we're not even trained to think for that long of period of time. And it's rough. You really have to be prepared. Definitely not what I did.
Okay, so I like to say it's a test. It's not a test of knowledge. It's a test to see how well you can take tests, and more specifically, how well you can take the MCAT. Because you're saying it was nothing like you ever saw, and then myself, I've already been through medical school. I'm working as a physician. I've taken the boards. It's not like anything that you'll see ever again as well. So it's one of those tests that just you need to respect it and learn from it. So you got your score back and you did poorly. We don't need to talk about numbers here.
Right.
But below average, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Which is
slightly, but yes.
Yeah, and that's expected.
Right.
That's normal for somebody that's taking the first practice test, and you took your first quote unquote practice test was the real thing.
Right.
And so where did you go from there? How did you correct course and go, okay, I totally screwed that up and now I need to fix it? Where did you go?
Well, I was in the process of applying. I actually just applied without an MCAT score. And I took it in May. I got it back in June. I already sent my applications in and I saw that score and I was like, oh no, it's on your MCAT, your record forever. You can't erase it. So that's what's so important about taking practice tests and making sure that you feel confident and you're prepared enough for that exam. Because I wish I could take that score back and I can't. But obviously I needed to retake it and then I was rushed. My application was needed. I sent it in June with that score that I just received. And then I had to schedule another date for about 2 months in August. And again, you get 2 months to study. I don't even think that's enough time. And I didn't really want to study in the summer. I didn't force myself enough. And I retook it. And then the scores came back in September. Well, they already send out interviews and secondaries by September. And then that's another few weeks before they even get yours. So that's where I went. And I didn't leave myself enough time to study for the second one, which I did do better on, believe it or not.
Okay.
It's a little bit, but. So.
And between the first one and the second one, you're saying you probably didn't study enough.
No, I think I took one practice test. And again, that's not nearly enough. And I misjudged again. I got, it was like a 28 or 29. And I thought, I'm done there. I studied it a little bit. That's enough. I'll take it the second time. I know what I'm doing. I already took it once. And no, that's completely the wrong way to think about it as well.
And that's a good score, 28 or 29. I got a 27. I got into medical school.
Right. I thought it was, for a practice test, it was, I thought I was fine. But I don't know.
Okay. The 28 or 29 was on the practice test, or what? That was your score on the second one?
No. That was the practice test, not the second one.
Okay. Mm-hmm. On the real thing, you scored a little bit better than your first one?
Yeah, just like a couple points, which still wasn't enough to secure me a spot.
Okay. And by that point, you're probably very late in the application season. It's hard to get a spot anyway.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. And I was struggling to think, man, do I take it again? Do I take it next month, the last date in September? And I just said, forget it. And then that brought me to the DO, applying to the DO schools. And we can talk about that too if you'd like.
Yeah, let's get into that, because it's one of those unfortunate things, and maybe you can talk about how you got to that realization, but it's one of those things you see online of, oh, your grades aren't good enough, you should go to a DO school.
Right.
So how did you come to that conclusion?
My friend was applying. He did okay on the Mcat, but he didn't want to go anywhere else besides DO schools just because of their thinking and their view on medicine. And I thought, forget that. I'm going to be an MD. And I was very ignorant about it. And I'm kicking myself now because I'm actually waitlisted at a DO school. And I toured that school and I absolutely loved it. And I'm still crossing my fingers for this fall, although I know the chances may be slim. But I went ahead and I applied in September, which is really late. And I still got an interview. They sent me my secondary. I was thrilled. Got an interview in December. But apparently that's not one of the best times to interview because of holiday breaks. They go over break. They kind of forget about you. And then they see, your MCAT score. So then they put me on hold, and I didn't know anything until May, and I realized they told me I was waitlisted. So.
Okay. So you wish, again, one of those kind of just, you didn't do your homework, didn't know what a DO was, what they're really the same as an MD at this point.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. Just their view on medicine, I think, is the only thing that's different. And they perform the osteopathic manipulations.
Okay.
So I wish that's another thing I wish I would have known.
Okay.
Or I would have applied. I would have applied the same time I applied to MD schools, and I'm not saying for sure, but I think I would have stood a much better chance of getting in, and I probably would be accepted there.
Yeah, and as of the time we're recording this, there's still a discrepancy in GPA and MCAT for DO schools. Although if you look at the raw numbers, getting into a DO school, it's more competitive to get into a DO school at this point.
It is, because a lot more students are applying there because they either don't have the MCAT or the GPA, or maybe it's a little bit of both. Mm-hmm. But some DO schools do have a required MCAT score. The one I applied to didn't, but obviously mine was still, not the best by any means. And I think their average was very close to the MD schools that I was applying to.
Yeah. So where are you now in the process?
I obviously am still crossing my fingers for coming off the wait list, but I reapplied because in reality that's probably, like I said, a slim chance. So I reapplied for 2014, and I also broadened my my applications instead of just applying in my state, which is ideally that's where I would like to be. But in the end, I have the same dream of becoming a physician no matter where I get that degree from. So I've applied elsewhere, all the surrounding states, places I could see myself being.
So I think one of the mistakes that people often make is they are too narrow with their application. They go, I'm from West Virginia, all my family's here, my friends are here, this is where I want to stay.
Right.
And so they're very narrow-minded with their application, whereas med school is, the raw numbers again show that it's very hard to get in no matter where you apply. So the more places you apply really does increase your chances of getting in, because And for again, students out there listening, every school looks for something different in an applicant. Every school is trying to piece together the perfect little community of students to make up their class for that year. And so you may have been the perfect applicant for a school in Virginia, but you were only applying in West Virginia, and they didn't want any more of you as an applicant. They had plenty of you already.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely.
Okay, so how many schools did you apply to the first time?
I applied to 3, 2 MD and 1 DO, all in my state.
So that's very few schools.
Very.
And the average, I think, right now is 14 schools that students apply to?
Yes.
And how many did you?
15.
How many did you apply to this time?
Well, that's another story. I applied to, I think it might have been 6 DO schools total. And then I still only applied to the 2 MD schools because I'm hoping to bring my MCAT score up. And if I don't want to waste that $1,000, you know what I mean? When they won't even look at you if you don't have this certain score. They won't even send out the secondary if you don't meet their MCAT requirements. So right now I'm banking on raising my score, and my applications are into my in-state, which I have the best shot of getting in anyway, being an in-state applicant. And hopefully if my scores are raised, then I will go ahead. My application's already verified. I'll just pick the schools and send it there. I'm hoping it's not too late in September, but I'd rather do that than be out thousands of dollars applying to, 14, 15 schools when I don't even know if my MCAT score will raise that much.
And
see what I'm saying?
When did you retake the MCAT?
I'm planning on taking it in August 28th, actually.
And how has your studying for the MCAT changed?
I actually bought a full set of exam crackers, which this is surprising. They're actually interesting to read. So not only am I learning and studying, I'm actually enjoying it somewhat. So I definitely recommend them, and I think they're the best. I bought Kaplan, but I'm not going to bash companies, but for me, exam crackers is the best fit so far.
Okay.
I've found.
And what about practice tests?
I've been taking one a week, and I'm pretty close to where I think I'll do.
Are you sitting down taking it like the real thing?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I go to the library, and I'm there by 7:50, and I take it as I would at 8 a.m. And I put the headphones on so I can still. It's like the same exact atmosphere. There's people around. Obviously, they're not walking around. They're at other computers too. Mm-hmm. It's quiet. And that's about the same atmosphere as you're in with the real MCAT. You're taking it with other students, or other students taking different tests and they're with you. So I've tried to keep the same.
Yeah, and you as an athlete, you practice as you play, right?
Right. Practice makes perfect.
Well, perfect practice makes perfect, right?
Right.
But yeah, you have to mimic the real thing. I think one of the other mistakes that some students make is they take a practice test and then they do maybe a third of it in the morning, and then they take a break, and then they do another third in the afternoon, and then tomorrow they do the last of it, and then they try to figure out their score from that, and that's how they take all of their practice tests.
Right, and that's not beneficial at all, in my opinion, because whenever you take it, you have to take them back to back to back. You get a 10-minute break, but it's 4 to 5 hours, and that's what I said before. It's a marathon. You have to be prepared to think and solve problems for that period of time.
Yeah,
so
exactly. So that's good. So you are learning along the way. Unfortunately, you started a little late, but if this would have been your freshman year and you started learning all this stuff, you'd be awesome right now, and you are awesome, but you're getting there.
Oh, thanks.
So
but surely.
Yeah, I want to talk about what you're doing in the online world as Pre-Med Princess on Twitter, sharing your path, kind of like what I'm doing with the podcast and the website on my end.
Right.
How did you get started with that?
This is really funny. I saw there weren't very many pre-med accounts, obviously not nearly as many as they are now. But I saw one and I thought, maybe I should make one, because a lot of my friends started telling me how annoying all of my nerd posts were on regular Twitter, and talking about studying all the time and all the things I was learning in science. I was so excited to share, and no one else appreciated. So I just figured I'd make a pre-med account. And obviously I'm girly, so I thought, pre-med princess, that kind of sounds pretty cool. And I just started from there.
And how long ago was that?
Actually, it was it's almost the year anniversary. August 2nd is when I started.
That's
I'm
awesome.
almost at 10,000 followers.
That's crazy.
I know, it's a huge feat. Almost got that K after my name.
What kind of feedback are you getting?
Really good feedback, actually. I have set up an email to where students can contact me and ask me any questions, and I try to help them. If I don't know an answer, I try to find someone that does. Like, if you follow me on Twitter, you see that I reference people, ask so-and-so, this person will be better to ask. I've gotten a lot of great feedback. I think it's been really beneficial to pre-med students in particular, and also like pre-pharmacy and pre-dental and PA and nurses too.
Mm-hmm.
I have like a wide variety of followers. And I recently created that ask.fm account where they can ask questions. And that's been a huge hit. I've been answering so many questions a day.
Don't let it interfere with your MCAT studying.
I've been trying not to.
That's awesome. And I think it's important for students going through the process to share. And one of the things that I try to do here is try to break down that the whole pre-med and the gunner mentality. It is a competitive process getting into medical school, but that doesn't mean you have to cut down the person next to you to succeed.
Right. You have to be a jerk. No.
Yeah, you don't have to. And I always talk about two heads are better than one. You can find a good study partner and both of you can do better.
I agree too. And typically as a physician, you have another physician working alongside you, whether it's in the clinic or you have a whole team of physicians in a hospital. So I don't really get the gunner attitude either, the only man for himself, when you're not alone as a doctor typically. And even if you're the only doctor in your practice, you have nurses that help you out, and it's just, I'm anti-gunner too.
Exactly.
So,
you work in a team these days, and
right.
if you're a gunner going through the pre-med process, a gunner going through medical school, then as soon as you finally are a doctor, you're going to have a hard time working with everybody else because you're used to going it alone and throwing everybody else under the bus.
Right.
So hopefully,
no one's going to want to work with you.
No. So yeah, and that's part of, again, what we try to do here is get that teamwork building early on. Let's talk about some of the key points that you wish when you started out as pre-med as a freshman, that some key points that you can tell those that are in high school now, they're just starting on their pre-med journey, to get them going down the right path.
Definitely start preparing for the MCAT. I don't think there's ever too early to start preparing. Obviously, if you haven't taken the courses yet, but start preparing early. Buy a really good set of practice, like prep books. Again, I recommend exam crackers. That just suits me personally, but other people have done well with Kaplan, with Princeton Review, Berkeley. So either whatever suits you. I also recommend taking the MCAT the spring of your junior year before the summer, which you apply a year in advance to medical school. And I recommend studying the fall all the way through, trying to fit some time in your busy schedule with undergrad to study for it and prepare. Also, I wouldn't count out DO schools. I would consider both MD and DO schools. Okay. And I think that's about it.
Okay. And let me just explain some of the points that you just made. Applying or taking the MCAT in the spring of your junior year allows you enough time to get your score back before you apply, right?
It does, yeah. Taking it, I mean, I'd at least take it in, I would say take it in March or so.
Mm-hmm. And that's just in case you don't do as well as you want to do, you can rethink submitting those applications. Because it is, some schools will look at reapplicants as a red flag. Some schools don't, some schools do. It's just one of those things.
Right.
And I was a reapplicant. I got in my second time. You're a reapplicant now. So it's not impossible as a reapplicant, but some schools may hold that as a red flag against you.
Right. I think you definitely have to be prepared if you do get interviews to say what you did differently in your gap year and how you prepared yourself.
Exactly.
And how you bettered yourself.
Okay.
So.
All right, folks. That was Pre-Med Princess on Twitter. There will be links to follow her on Twitter on the show notes. You can find the show notes, medicalschoolhq.net/session34. I want you also to continue the conversation with us. There's a couple different ways to do that. You can follow us on Twitter at medicalschoolhq. You can shoot us an email, feedback@medicalschoolhq.net, or you can just go to the show notes and leave a comment there at medicalschoolhq.net/session34. Also, I'm soliciting some feedback questions. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and one of the best podcast episodes that I like from different shows is when listeners call in and ask a bunch of questions, and the podcast host answers those questions. So we have a way for you to ask questions. If you go to medicalschoolhq.net/feedback, there will be a couple different ways for you to send us a question so that we can have, I want to have a show dedicated to listener questions. So that'd be awesome if you could do that. Again, as I always like to ask, if you find great value in this podcast and you haven't done so yet, if you can go leave us a rating on iTunes, leave us a review on iTunes. That's how other students find us, and that's how iTunes knows what shows to rank higher so that we're a little bit more visible in iTunes. So you can do that at medicalschoolhq.net/iTunes. As always, I hope the information provided to you today will help better guide you on your path to becoming a physician. I hope you join us next time here at the Medical School Headquarters.